Budgeting is honestly one of the most overrated topics covered in personal finance, period. I know this may upset some people or make some people angry, and some people are probably typing in their keyboard just ramming it out, but give me a chance to explain. So first, let's actually define what a budget is. We can think of a budget as simply measuring our income and our expenses. So how much money we have coming in and how much money we have going out, and how much net savings are we doing. That's one way to look at it. And you could argue, well, Mihir, we're doing a budget all the time, aren't we? Like once we like mentally think, okay, if I work 5 hours, this is how much I get paid. Or this item costs equivalent to 7 hours worth of work. Is it truly worth? Are we budgeting there? Well, yes, we are actually budgeting there. But the budget I'm referring to is the old dreaded one, which I'm sure you've all come across, spreadsheets. I personally hate recording everything down. And imagine doing this on a daily or a weekly basis. I'm saying they do have a place in this niche, but it's just honestly overrated. And I'll explain why and other things you can do. But tell me, when's the last time you said you'll go to the gym consistently? Yep, you've been saying that for a lot of years. Has it really happened? No. By the end of this video, I'll give you a couple of points and a couple of things you can do to actually make sure that it's a lifelong habit, not something you do like a short sprint, you do like a month, 2 months. I want this to be a lifelong habit. And there's so many things you can do to actually not even need a budget in the first place. So stay tuned for that. So the first talking point in this video is to understand the difference between a need and a want. Wait. Before you click off, please hear me out again. I know this is simple and you've heard it a million times, but this is truly important and imperative. I have a question for you guys, if you can answer it for me. How come so many people are unhappy in a first world country where most of your needs are satisfied? You have a roof over your head. If you don't, you have some sort of Centrelink or some sort of stimulus. You've got food, you've got water. You have so many support systems in place, yet how come people aren't that happy? And how come people are also in so much debt when you have all these things covered? Surely there's something missing. And that is to understand the difference between a need and a want. It's so simple. Let me give you an example right off the bat. Let's say you have a couple of subscriptions to like streaming services. Let's say you got Amazon Prime, you got Netflix, you got Disney, you got like Hulu, I think, or something. You've got that stuff. The first question I could say is, what's one of your least used subscriptions? It's XYZ. Oh, cut that out. Well, you know, but I could get a show that. It's no. It doesn't matter how much the amount is initially. What I'm trying to emphasize is the habit or the bad spending habit. So you're like, hey, it's $20. Yeah, eventually the $20, that's just the one activity. Let's say you do something else. You know, it's okay. It'll come in handy. You do something else, and then it just compounds. You do one habit after another. It's just that concept and the philosophy of this spending, which I'm trying to illustrate. But another good example I've thought again is, how many times have we heard people say, oh, I need a bigger car for the kids? Your car's $4. They like, what are they, like Godzilla? Yeah, like we see this everywhere. But no one questions it. Do you think you need a budget? Honestly, you think you'd have to really monitor your spending if you weren't buying all these lavish things or not doing these habits? Obviously, no, like 80% of the use of the budget would be gone straight off the bat. Obviously, you can have a bit more fine tuning and learn where you're actually honing in on money, but like it's still 80% gone out of the way if you don't like have these bad habits of spending. So that's one of the lowest hanging fruits, and I thought that's the first point I should cover with you, as many people have heard of it, but not many people implement it. So I hope that helped. Let's move on to the second point. Before we go on to the second point, I just want to add some more stuff. What I hate about the budget, which I'm making this video, is that many people focus on intensity. Like, you know, I'm gonna do it now, I'm gonna go full out. But that's the whole problem. You gotta have like sort of a progressive overload, similar to a gym where you slightly increase the weight over time. That's what you gotta do here. Let's say you have a problem with spending, hence why you're watching this video. So why you don't need a budget. You could essentially have a no spending challenge. Some people have done it, so where they just don't spend at all. It's like a week, 2 weeks. But what you gotta do is have small progressional gains. Let's say you shop every day. Now, let's say you shop every alternative day. And let's say you do that for like 2-3 weeks or even a month. The idea is to make it very, very easy and attainable, and gradually, slowly increment it and progressively overload it, because that way it will remain a lifelong habit. So if you have any issues, just cut down the spending. So you spend every day, spend every alternative day. Vice versa, just have some small progressional gain, which isn't too big enough to make it hard or doable. It should be very easy and seamless. That way you build a habit and eventually compounds over time, especially in a couple of years. The second solution to your problem or to the situation is to pay yourself first. I'm sure you've heard of this, or if you haven't heard of this, let me briefly explain. Paying yourself first simply refers to putting a portion of your payslip aside for yourself. So let's say you get $1,000 a week. You allocate 70% of that, or $700, towards emergency fund and living expenses. Then you allocate 20%, so $200, towards investing, and then 10% or $100 towards your own guilt-free spending. That way you have a system in place and you're not sort of feeling inclined to sort of dip into the other accounts, because everything is flowing seamlessly. You feel guilt-free. You're impacting your wealth creation because this is a good tool. You're getting only a portion of it and it's allocated every week. And I've already made a video on this, so I'll leave a link here on the eye icon. Click on that and it'll redirect you there. But otherwise, this concept was made popular by a lot of people, but for Australia, you should check out The Barefoot Investor by Scott Pape. He talks about this in the concepts of buckets, and that's really fascinating. So check that out as well. The third concept you guys guys need to be aware of is the hedonic effect and the domino effect, which I'm calling in this video. But if you're not sure what the hedonic effect is or what the hedonic adaptation is, you surely may have heard of hedonic treadmill, but if you're not sure, it essentially refers to people returning to their baseline of happiness, regardless if they've had a very positive event or a very negative event. So people just go back to that same level of happiness. And I'm sure that many of you would have experienced this. I personally can relate to this. Like, I got this watch. I really like this watch, especially the first week. I took care of it so dearly. You know, I was like watching it, I was like cleaning, I was making sure it wasn't bumping into anything. I'm sure many of us can relate. We've done that, whether that be new phones, a new car, maybe a new house. We've all been there. And what happens afterwards? We still care, we still like respect and love it, but it's not to that level we had when we initially got it. That's essentially what the hedonic effect refers to. And why I'm tying this in is because many people try and buy things to become happy. You're buying stuff to increase your happiness temporarily, but eventually you're going to return to baseline of happiness. So if you can get this concept wrapped around your head, this will do wonders. Because rather than putting that money towards like possession that can ultimately, you know, like it can slow you down, you know. The more stuff you have, the more cluttered you feel mentally. But rather than spending stuff on that, spend it on like experiences, maybe go skydiving and stuff like that, which you actually remember and something actually happened. So with that frame of mind, you will by default accumulate less possessions. You will be like spending less money on online shopping. Like, you know, some people just buy like useless stuff just because it's cheap. Like, you won't do that stuff because like, what's the point? Why not just save this money? Why not even just put this towards food or something else? So your mindset and your sort of goals shift with that. When you understand that material won't necessarily make you happy. Money can protect your, you know, your freedom and give you a lot of options, but actually purchasing material doesn't have a long effect because you go back to baseline levels of happiness, which we've all experienced. Now let's talk about my favorite, the domino effect. I'm calling the domino effect because I forgot the name of the person and the concept feels like it rhymes with domino. Essentially, there's a story of a man, a very frugal man who was gifted a expensive vase in his house. So he lives in a very simple house, you know, he's got very little possessions, just standard, simple and frugal guy. Until the day he gets an expensive vase gifted to him, he thinks to himself, you know, this vase looks really good, but it doesn't look good here. You know, in this simple house, this vase deserves its, you know, its own like orchestra or something. It deserves other things around it because it doesn't match this. So what he did was, the very next day, he bought curtains, he changed his cutlery, he changed his cookware, he even changed his clothes. And gradually over time, his personality changed. And then eventually what happened was, at the end of the story, he essentially suffered some serious misfortune and he couldn't recover. But he would have been able to recover if he didn't spend so frivolously. The moral of this story is, we ignore the ending where he did suffer. Most people don't suffer that bad as he did. He lost everything. But the moral of the story I'm just trying to illuminate is that how many of you people can see this occurring in this time? Like this current time, how do you see this? Because that story is thousands of years old. How do you see this occurring? The first thing I see is that when people refer to like a house, they're like, oh yeah, I've got the house, or I finally got my dream house. You know what, honey, you know, it looks good, but you know, something's missing. You know, the car is good, the car works, the car does its job, but you know, if we spend that much here, surely we can, you know, up the car a bit. So that's what they do. They buy a more expensive car, even though the car is perfectly fine, hasn't gone to the mechanic, you know, it doesn't have too much like kilometers on it, it's all good, but this sets in. Another example I could give to you is like, let's say you get promoted at work, you know, you feel bigger, you feel like, you know, I'm the man, I'm the woman, you feel like, you know, you're on top of the world. Then what do? You buy better clothes. Quite a lot of people do that. You buy better clothes. Let's say you got your RM Williams Chelsea boots, you got some MJ Bell suits, you're dripped out essentially. Then you go to your car, you're like, you know, what's the point? You know, I dress so well, you know, I look well, I think in a different manner, but my car is not reflecting my state of mind. So what do? They buy a more expensive car. I hope you can see where I'm going. It's like you upgrade one part of the room, or you get something that stands out, and then everything must follow along that line. And this is a trap many people fall into. Like, look at the guy in the story. I'll call him Domino for now, but he was a very frugal man for a long period of time. Like, he was like around 45 to 50 in that story, but he's a very old man, very experienced, not a young kid doing this. So if it could happen to him, it can happen to a lot of people, is what I'm trying to say. And I've caught myself in this trap as well. When I was upgrading my shoes, I'm like, you know, if I upgrade my shoes, what's the point of wearing like these YD sort of suits? Like, they're nothing compared to, I should get like MJ bells. I'm like, if I get MJ bells, I should get these cufflinks. And it's a rabbit hole that we all go down. And if you can recognize this early and just consciously stop it, this will help out so much with your life. Overall, I hope this video gave you some insight on what you can do and why I personally don't like a budget. You can still do one if you want, but it's sort of like that gym thing where you go intensely, then you just drop it off. I want it to be a lifelong habit, which you do. And the 3 solutions I mentioned, which were pretty much understanding the difference between a need and a want, paying yourself first, and understanding the hedonic treadmill and the domino effect. This will pretty much pivot you to a path where you never need to really touch a budget because you'll be doing the right things. In order to be successful in life, you just have to not do the wrong things. Imagine you understand, okay, I don't need this new car. I'm fine with this perfectly, car. It drives me from A to B. It gets the job done. It's comfortable. It doesn't break down. Why do I need to do it? Or if you do spend some money on something, or you get a gift and you're like, I need to up everything in my house. Here, you can quickly stop and think, hold on, Mihir said, oh, okay, no, I can see it happening. Because all these things I've said have happened to us one time or another. No one's immune. Key thing is that we understand what we did wrong and move forward from there. So I hope this video answered some questions and at the same time give you some insights on what you can do to avoid doing a budget, because I know a lot of people don't like it, just like myself, especially people who work on spreadsheets all the time. You get sick of it. But overall, I hope this was valuable, gave you some insights. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a fabulous day ahead of you. Goodbye.